It's almost 9 in the morning. I'm so pumped to meet other travelers like myself. Oh, I used to feel guilty waking up only to find that everyone else was already gone, like I'm not hustling hard enough. But you know what? The daily 9 to 5 grind is already tough enough, so when I'm traveling, I'm getting my sleep. After my usual morning routine, I set out to find whatever adventure Fukuoka had for me today. The plan for today was literally explore Fukuoka. I watched a few videos to get a sense of the city, but I didn't come with a checklist. To me, having a list throws away the surprise and excitement of exploration, reducing the day to a tasteless grind. I'd rather hop off the train midway, chasing a fleeting glimpse of an unnamed cherry blossom-adorned riverbank, than confine myself to a checklist. I might end up disappointed, but a journey is never just a means to an end. I like to travel as if I'm in an open-world RPG. Nobody tells me what to do, and I don't ask the internet for opinions. Instead, I scout satellite images and street views for oddities that catch my eye and plot my own route there. But today, I'm trying a different approach. You know, in a ton of games where you have to climb to the highest point to reveal nearby locations on the map, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm heading to the highest point in Fukuoka to see what I can discover. But first, I need to unlock fast travel. So I headed to Hakata Station and picked up a one-day subway ticket, thinking it would give me the freedom to go wherever I wanted, but it didn't. I figured Fukuoka was a big city, so I trusted its subway system and skipped homework. Turns out Fukuoka only has 2 subway lines and coverage is hit or miss depending on where you want to go. And the place I wanted to go, it doesn't go there. We were off to a great start already. Luckily, the bus station was just nearby, and the routes weren't too cryptic to figure out. So like the well-behaved tourist I am, I lined up and hopped on as soon as mine arrived. We rode west along the coast, with Fukuoka's cityscape flashing past on one side and the sound of waves breaking on the other. It was a pretty enjoyable ride. About 25 minutes later, I arrived at the foot of the tower. The tower is a sleek glass needle with mirrors on all its sides and frankly quite futuristic looking. But what's more interesting is that beneath those glass panels, there's only the lobby and the observation deck. The space in between is completely empty and unoccupied. Since I hadn't had breakfast yet, I decided to check out my budget gourmet options at the Family Mart on the first floor before heading up. I ended up choosing a neba salad, something I'd never tried before and was curious about. Neba is an onomatopoeia for sticky and slimy, so the salad had ingredients with a bit of that texture like okra, nameko mushrooms, and seaweeds, but also more familiar ingredients like sliced onions and grated radish. Despite the name, the sliminess wasn't too bad at all. The salad was light and crunchy, and the sour-savory yuzu sauce made it surprisingly flavorful. It's probably one of my favorite convenience store finds, and I'd take it any day over the sandwiches everyone's crazy about. After finishing my food, I went to buy a ticket for the observation deck. There were 2 ladies, each at their own counter, and both counters were empty. Indecisive as I was, I got a bit too nervous to decide whom I should go to. They both laughed as I sandwalked toward the counters, finally decided to go to the one on the left. I had to throw in a quick sumimasen to the lady on the right, and she smiled back, asked how my day went. Your boy's out here breaking hearts early in the morning. I took the elevator up, and from 100 meters above, Fukuoka really does look like a big city. But it also has this warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feel. I guess that's a polite way of saying it doesn't look as modern as Tokyo or Osaka, but it doesn't need to. I once saw a Fukuoka local describe the city as always 5 to 10 years behind Tokyo, and every ramen is tonkotsu. It might sound like a complaint, but you can tell the guy loves the city immensely because he also added that things are chill in Fukuoka, but not too slow. I get it. Some of us appreciate it when things move at a more nuanced pace, and we've got to stick together. While I was up there, something caught my eye, a Mediterranean-style building with white walls and warm terracotta rooftops. I wasn't sure what it was for, but it really stood out from the surroundings, so that became my first destination. I also spotted a large patch of greenery to the southeast, which Google tells me is a park. That gives me 2 places to check out, enough to keep me busy for a while. With my map marked, I took the elevator down and headed toward my first destination by the beach. The unique building turned out to be a wedding venue. Exotic and well built, sure, but it wasn't historical and had no stories to tell. In fact, I wasn't even allowed in. So I continued along the beach and found a shady spot to sit and watch the waves. I love summer. The sound of cicadas, the gentle waves, and the blazing sun. I had it all. This trip was delayed by a few weeks due to an earthquake advisory, and I'd worried it might be too cold by the time I got here. But look at this beautiful day. I was vibing hard. After capturing a few time lapses of the clouds drifting by, I moved on to my next destination, Ohori Park. Normally, I'm not a big fan of parks. They feel artificial. In city building games, parks are just there to keep the miserable city people's happiness above the minimum, so they'll keep working and paying taxes so that I, the mayor, can have a budget.
Yeah, boy.
But one thing I've learned from traveling is to stay open-minded and try different things. You never know which experiences will end up creating precious memories. So I boarded a bus to the park. Once again, my one-day subway pass was completely useless, but it's only 500 yen, so no big deal. I'll find a use for it later. Ohori Park looked like your typical city park, with a large body of water at its center and seemingly home to a whole roster of wild animals. By the lake, there was a lifelike bird model. Now that's a new low. First a hollow tower, now a fake bird. I mean, if you don't have the cooler animals, we're happy with the real ones you got. Don't do this? It wasn't until the model moved just a little that I realized it was actually a real bird. It was just staying very, very still. Nearby, there was an information board on the park's wildlife, and it took me a while to figure out that it was a gray heron. It didn't help that the cheeky little dude was missing his whole neck in the mugshot. The best part was that my little buddy wasn't afraid of me at all. I got to sit right next to him while he stared at the water, searching for a juicy snack. The ducks bobbed on the sunlit waves, and a pigeon nearby was trying really hard to impress his potential lady for a good half an hour without any luck. Don't give up, buddy. You got this. There were more waterfowl perched on stakes in the lake, which I initially thought were fake as well. Were they trained to do this, or it was just a convenient place to fish? I had no idea. Children ran, laughed, and chased each other through the playground. It was just an ordinary slice of life, but I savored every second of it. I love to imagine how different my life would be if I were to grow up in a city like this, that's so different from my own, and I'd get entirely lost in that thought. By the time I realized I should move on, it was already 3:30. Where to next? Well, since I'd bought a one-day subway ticket and hadn't used it yet, I couldn't just let that go to waste, could I? So I decided to take the subway as far as possible to make the most of it. I've always wanted to explore Japan's countryside, which is surprisingly hard to do in sprawling cities like Tokyo, but here, a simple 30-minute subway ride would drop me right into the rice fields. So, off I went. I made my way to the nearest subway station and couldn't resist the temptation to buy a mandarin-flavored slushie from a vending machine. The weather looked gorgeous through the aqua blue window. As I traveled further west, clusters of buildings gradually faded into patchworks of green and gold, and I knew my destination wasn't far. I got off at Hatae Station, which should put me right in the middle of the countryside. I was a bit skeptical at first until I saw rice was being harvested by a small harvester just 50 meters away. I followed the road, going deeper into the Inaka, and within minutes I was completely surrounded by quiet rice fields on both sides. The gentle breeze rippled through the rice stalks, carrying a cool relief that softened the lingering summer heat. There was no one around except for a few cyclists and the occasional car passing by, leaving the waterbirds' graceful dance a private spectacle just for me. I took a right and continued eastward until a stone torii gate came into view, so I went to investigate. I was pleasantly surprised to find a relatively large and well-maintained shrine nestled in the middle of the rice fields. The entire shrine was shrouded in tall trees. If I hadn't seen the gate first, I wouldn't even known it was there. This unique setup really added to the serene atmosphere, and I'd never seen anything like it before. Although there wasn't much going on within the shrine grounds, I loved the vibe and considered it a lucky find. After leaving the shrine, I resumed my journey. Growing up in the city, there's always been this pull toward the countryside. Walking along a muddy path between rows of rippling rice fields was a canon event and an achievement unlocked. A quiet stroll through the countryside away from the crowds really makes you appreciate the little things, like the red spider lilies along the stream, or an empty factory nonchalantly blasting John Lennon over the loudspeakers. If, like me, you feel you've had enough of the city's hustle and bustle, know that something entirely different might be just a few subway stops away. I don't have enough words to express how much I adored this little side quest, or how much I wished I could stay just a bit longer. But sometimes the poetic has to give way to the practical. My train was coming in 20 minutes, and I had no plans to wait another hour for the next one, so I hurried back to the station. Catching the subway back to Hakata Station, it was already dark outside. Tonight's dinner would be another Fukuoka classic, motsunabe. I found a small restaurant close to my hotel, and the photos I'd seen looked outrageous, so I had to give it a try. Having already studied the menu on Google Maps, I ordered the 2,850 yen satisfaction course, which included the hot pot itself, an appetizer, and tofu. I also asked for a beer, not expecting much, but got casually served the best beer I've ever had. It was an icy cold Kirin with tiny ice flakes in it. With each sip, I could feel the crystals melt in my mouth, and it was extremely refreshing. I don't know of anywhere else that serves beer like this. Was it a hidden technique or a freezer malfunction? I couldn't decide. The appetizer was sumotsu, lightly boiled pig tripe in a vinegar dressing, garnished with scallions, grated ginger, and chili pepper. The sweet and sour flavor added depth to the offal's creamy fattiness. Add to that the warm kick of the ginger, and you've got an unusual combination that worked surprisingly well. I was properly appetized. Time for the main dish. If anything, the motsunabe was a spectacle to look at. The broth, the offals, the chives on top, they whispered into my ears a fantasy beyond human imagination. The waiter Onisan was too busy flirting with the young ladies at the next table, so I had to light the fire myself. Good for him. As the offal simmered in the broth, it absorbed the flavors of soy sauce and a hint of garlic. And as if being succulent and tender wasn't enough, the chives' crunch gave everything even more delightful texture. In the end, I dropped the tofu in, and it was a mellow transition back to the dreadful reality, a man and his empty pot. The only thing I wasn't fond of about that meal was the portion size. It didn't quite live up to its name, and I'm too cheap to order more. So I paid my bill and hit the convenience store for a snack and a beer, trying to call it a day. But the beer only made the cravings grow. To me, there are 3 things that never go wrong in Japan: ramen, curry rice, and beef bowl. I have my favorite spots for each, but honestly, they're never bad anywhere. And there happened to be a Matsuya just around the corner. It was a hearty meal, and I knew it wouldn't disappoint. It was almost midnight after the gluttony rampage. The voices finally stopped, and I was at last ready to hit the bed. It's wild to think that in just 24 hours, I'll be sleeping on the floor of a cargo ship at sea, and I just can't wait for tomorrow to come. But for now, it's time to get some rest. There's a long day ahead of us, so good night. I'll see you in the morning.